by Mer Herosner podcast and Vahan Setyan. We are honored and thrilled you could all join us here live in person. I'm your host, Vic and Mike, and as always, I'm joined by my multi-talented co-host, Mr. Mike Valiant.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Hello, everybody.
We are streaming live on YouTube and Facebook for the world to see, so give yourselves a round of applause for being here. This is a very important topic which is dear to all of us as Armenians around the world. If you have not heard about Mer Herosner, we are a historical podcast that cover Armenian culture, basically events from the early days of the Armenian Highlands all the way to modern history. We invite historians and intellectuals to help us learn more about where we come from.
Well, why history? Well, we believe that history is the fruit of power. The knowledge of history is one of the wealthiest possessions one can have. When you know your own history and combine it with world history, it will help you make better decisions in life, sometimes even predict the future, from the historical examples of great people and events before our time.
Now, growing up in the United States, now at our young age, 24.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're turning.
Flip
right?
the numbers. Flip the numbers.
And the recent war in Artsakh, we realized that ourselves don't know much about our history as Armenians. We know the typical Tigran the Great, King Turtad III, Gregory the Illuminator, 301 AD, Mesrop Mashto, so forth. But to dive deep and learn factual history and what took place, the average Armenian does not know.
So then the Mer Herosner podcast was born. We just recently celebrated our 1 year anniversary. First birthday, right? Yeah. They didn't think we'd make it this far.
Nope.
And the rest, as they say, is history, right? We've reached an audience all over the world. We love it. We can't believe this has happened.
Yeah.
Not only Armenians, but also other nationalities. I myself have had friends from Australia and various different countries, non-Armenians who listen to the podcast regularly. The feedback we get is our history is as important as world history because it's so linked and tied into everything that happened in that part of the world. Right?
Well, before we begin and bring our guest on stage, we wanted to give you guys a brief biography. Vahan Setyan is the Universal Ambassador and Domestic and Foreign Affairs bestowed by the 7th Council Fires of the Ocheti Chakowi Treaty Government Organization, Dakota Government Branch of the Sioux Nation of England. He has appeared as a guest in numerous television and radio show invites, including Red Ice Creation, High Doom, and Jimmy Church Live, and also Men. Thank you. And he has been interviewed by experts in their field. He has published academic and research-oriented work and has done presentations on varied topics, including ancient languages and world history of Native American and Indigenous affairs, financial incentives, and industrial psychology.
He is the author of several books, including Armenian Origins of Vast, and is currently working on the upcoming Volume 2 of Language as Fingerprint. Volume 1 was published in 2014, as we know, reaching a global audience. He has authored articles such as Industrial Hemp Production in Indian Country, Chronic Disease Management in Indian Country, and Letter to Humanity, Genocide and Ethnocide of the Native Americans. His 2020 publication, The Tipping Point, Healthcare Woes, COVID-19, and Future of Native Health, is groundbreaking and the only inside critical and unbiased view of the current economic, societal genocide issue of the Native Americans and possible future economic development and healthcare solutions in the post-pandemic era.
His efforts and contributions in economic development and healthcare for served communities and veterans have been officially recognized and acknowledged by several key organizations, institutions, including Asian American National Society, Department of Justice, and the White House, as he established the first terminal illness and chronic disease management program on tribal lands under the presidential mandate.
He is a participating member of the Association of Former Intelligence Officers and is currently collaborating with state, federal, indigenous, and foreign government leaders and associations on economic development, healthcare, and cultural preservation, as well as historical and heritage defamation issues around the globe, raising concerns to UNESCO, the UN, and the international courts. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to present Dr. Vahan Setyan.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, very kind. Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Okay, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Well,
Thanks for the introduction.
Have a seat.
Thank you. Please. Okay.
All right, everyone. First of all, we want to thank everybody for being here. If you guys can turn off your cell phones or put them on mute or lower the volume. This is, like we said, this is a very important topic. Falsification of our history and culture is a ongoing war that started hundreds of years ago, I would say. And Vahan Setyan has been a guest on our podcast many times and talked about this topic, but we've kind of touched around it. But this is a very important event that we need to do for people to wake up and see what's going on. As Armenians, we're losing the information. They are taking away our history from us. And this history is so important. And if we don't preserve it, we don't teach it, first of all, to ourselves. As I mentioned, a lot of us at our age group don't know what our history is.
It's shocking.
Yeah,
Very
and
shocking.
we need to teach this to our kids. So, again, Vahan Setyan, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for joining forces with us to have this conversation. So,
Well, what I want to do is I want to go over the slides with the audience. I didn't bring any notes, so keep from my heart. Hopefully my memory will serve me well. We started late, so I have 2 wines in my stomach, so hopefully I can remember what I'm going to say. But this is something very important. And what we'll do is I'll just go through the slides. Pay attention to the flow. Everything is connected on the presentation. So if you're going to take notes, great. But I assure you all the slides are interconnected, interwoven. And at the end, we will circle back to the idea of why we're doing this. Why is it important? And very, very specifically, whatever I'm going to talk about today is relevant to all cultures of the world. That's the main thrust of this presentation, especially cultures that have a history. Every culture wants to preserve their history. They want a history that is presented well and accurately without any misinformation. So I hope that whatever I give to you, you can take it away, whether you are Armenian or not, to use it for your own benefit as far as supporting your cause for your own culture, making sure that your culture doesn't fade. In the Armenian history, it's much more severe. Actually, the situation is very dire. It's hanging on a thread, and if we don't save it, we're not going to see Armenia within the next few years, especially in the north. So we gotta kind of look at this from a sense of urgency standpoint, because it's really a very chaotic situation out there. As they said, yes, I'm involved in government. I do work with various organizations, and we do consult with universities across the world. And Armenia's history, especially in the United States, is pretty bad. Universities in the United States falsify our history in a very bad manner. So to kind of put that out there, we're not here to name any names, but I want to let you know some examples of how bad it is, especially for those who have no idea what's presented, especially with university professors who have this extraordinary accuracy. They have several PhDs and all these awards. They help each other out. They help each other publish. They get funded extraordinarily well to publish. But if you look at the entire content and the data, it doesn't jive. It doesn't connect to what we see at the scientific level, at the genetic, at the comparative level. We don't see it from archaeogenetic standpoint. So it has a big void, and we're trying to ensure that void is filled. Are we okay with this?
Are we okay with the mic?
Check. Hopefully the mic wouldn't fail me, but I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna walk around.
We're gonna get out of your way while you do this.
Oh,
We'll
good.
come back.
Floor is
Have
all
a
yours.
discussion.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. So, are we okay with the lights? All right, great. Again, thank you very much for being here. We have also a very special guest, but I want to thank Tarakin for putting all this together. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. This was going to be a small event, but turned into this extraordinary thing. So thank you very much for the art show and the cocktails, music, and it feels like a gala. So thank you very much, especially for this type of a topic. You usually have superstars going back and forth, but in our case, it's a huge privilege. So thank you very much. We also have a very special person, Tuan Nguyen. He's the chairman of the Asian American National Committee. He's part of the UN for the refugee cases at the same time on hate and hate speech and defamation. So Tuan, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. So as far as what I'm going to present, just follow through, and the slides will give you kind of the idea of what the next topic is going to be. But very important, the way we look at things, if we change the way we look at things, those things change. So if we when we change the way we examine things, let's say, things we examine kind of change. So we have to look at things from different perspectives. And we have to include that in our historical data, in our historical research, for us to get a very good picture of what we are presenting, what we're telling the audience. Now, as far as for the introduction, if you look at this image, if you look at the light source, you can have, let's say, from one angle, let's say comparative linguistics, on the other angle, genetics, on the other angle, archaeogenetics. But if you look at the historical truth, it requires all those items together for us to be able to figure out what we're talking about. And this can be a historical truth for anything that we examine. So whatever is being given to us, I think it's a very good idea to not only include all these ideas, but also logic, rationality, and reason. It doesn't matter how many PhDs they have. If something doesn't make sense, it should be discarded, or at least questioned to a certain extent. And I think it's time for us now to start really re-examining as what's being fed to the students at the university. And when I do have discussions with professors, sometimes they get stuck because when you bring new information to the fold, they have this difficulty of digesting it because they have spent so many years going through schooling and publishing paperwork, and then one discovery can change it all. Look what happened in 1990s when Cortázar was discovered, right? We use Gobe Pepe, but let's say Cortázar. Have you seen historical books being revised at a grand scale? No, you don't see it, because those professors have spent hundreds of years putting it together. So Cortázar is not very important because it will destroy their career, and it has. So if you look at this map, you can see like kind of the waves. Something happened in Cortázar and eventually in Pisa period. Something happened 15,000 years ago when the ice was melting, and so you had these regional floods and so forth, where all the other ideas, the mythology and floods, local flood happened. If you look at this map, some people say it's bigger, but if you look at this map right here, this constitutes the extent of Armenia from a historical standpoint. Of course, some people say you can go further down a little bit, but as far as taking consideration of all the historical data, of all the linguistic data and archaeogenetics and so forth, this constitutes a rough idea of how big it was. As you can see, it's half of Turkey, goes all the way to Georgia and then Azerbaijan and down to Iraq, Iran. And interestingly, all the first of civilization, from hunter and gatherers to civilization, all the first happened there. If one thing, let's say, was one in Japan and then the other one was all the way in New Zealand and so forth, but that didn't happen. We have the oldest shoe, we have the oldest skirt, right? We have the oldest winery, we have the oldest agriculture, animal domestication, all happened at the same place. So something happened. Now, I'm not going to go into the theories of astronaut theory and all that, but there had to be some inception of information that came down, or how it was sprang up from somewhere for those people to go from hunter and gatherers all the way to human civilization, and for them to have structured religion, structured animal domestication and language and so forth, the petroglyphs and everything else. Only in Armenia you would find petroglyphs that look like writing. In other places you see a horse and a cow and everything else. But in Armenia you see abstract, hieroglyphs and petroglyphs. So 15,000 years ago, there was a lot of ice all around. As you can see, the Persian Gulf kind of is closed up a little bit. And at the same time, initially it wasn't called the Persian Gulf. A long time ago it was called the Sumerian Gulf, and then it was changed to Persian. But we'll go into that in a bit. So all the ice melted, obviously went down into the Sumerian lands, and then that's how basically the idea of a flood came in. I mean, if you're an ant and then you have a drop of water, that for you that's a global flood. So it can mean anything for those people, especially if their world is very small. If it's a city is flooded, that's it. The entire world is flooded. So that's fine. Let's take that with a grain of salt. As you can see, even in historical books that they describe the melting of the ice, they still put kingdom of Urartu as Ararat, which some of our professors can't even contemplate the idea, right? What is Urartu? Urartu never happened. There were never Urartus. I'll go into that. Okay. So we usually surf Facebook and so forth, and we kind of find certain things that it's asinine. So this is a wonderful website because it talks about the Indus Valley, the cultures and civilizations, because it's very important for us to understand and learn of different cultures, right? It's very important. We need to respect each other and how we contributed to one another, to human civilization. Now, this page has about 534,000 likes. So as you can see, it's already being shared by a lot of people. Millions of people are sharing this data. And then they have this post. Now, they do talk about that, and they connect it to the Indus Valley and its etymology and how it's connected to India and so forth. Now, this was found in Lake Sevan in 1973. Now, whether this is a spaceship or not is 3,000 years old. But, we don't have to say it's a spaceship, but, it looks like it, that's fine. So you have, and so we can say it was found in Toprakal in modern-day Turkey, or we can say found in Tushba, ancient Armenian, modern-day Turkey. The language has to be very specific. If you say it was found in ancient Turkey, it doesn't make sense. But our professors use it. So if the students are dumber than a potato, they can accept that because it's a professor. Okay. They have no idea the difference between ancient Armenia and ancient Turkey because it's the same location. So we need to be very careful because that word disseminates, and now we have it's a runaway train now. It's a runaway train. We can't get it back. So now we're fighting this war between millions of people who are being funded to falsify information against few people who are trying to say, no, you're wrong, but they're not being funded. So we're really underhanded. Now, when they posted this, you have a lot of comments and people just say opinions, but those opinions don't matter. But I want to give you an example about misinformation that flows to millions of people. So one guy goes, it's in ruins in Turkey. Doesn't say modern Turkey, it says Turkey. So that's already a problem. Two, and then Indian guy goes, Turkey was once India. Now, he has, but I want to show you something. Okay. It has more than 14,000 likes and has 3,239 shares. So you can imagine how far this confirmation has gone, right? Now all of a sudden, Turkey was India. Huge problem. And you're dealing with, hundreds of millions of people that are sharing this false data about people who are only 10 million, and 99.9% of them have no idea what the hell is going on. They just go day by day with their lives, have no idea that this type of information is going through. And we find false information on the news or what have you, and then we get mad. Why didn't they say this? What? Well, of course, if nobody's paying attention, who cares? Now, Tushpa has always been mentioned as part of Armenia, even in old maps. So they're not saying that either. So they've artificially kind of separated Urartians from Armenians, even though they're the same people. There is Urartu and Urartians are artificial people. They never existed. It's Armenian. That's it. Now this is the extent of Urartu, 715 BC, and you have all that extent. Urartu is part of Lake Urmia. You have Lake Sevan, and then over there you have Lake Van, all part of the Armenian kingdom. So Urartu is basically Ararat. It's 3 letters, 3 consonants. Either you can read it as Urartu or Ararat. And the thing is, it's an Assyrian accent. So the Semitic people have used Urartu as part of their missing of vowels and their vocabulary on the way they write things. So of course we're going to have this disinformation happening. But the thing is, we're not aware of it. All this started without the Armenians first. So Armenians were never involved in the examination of their history. And it's still going on. When was the last time you heard that all the excavations happening in Portasar in Turkey, you have Armenian professors all over? You don't. Okay, so I'm going to make a couple of things. Now, Urartu is Armenia is basically the same thing. The Tralevi Buristan indicates that Armenia, Urartu, Armenia, and Harmenia in all the different languages is the same people of the same land. But all of a sudden, they got separated from their own. Now we're different people. And obviously, this is about falsification. So I want to give you examples of falsifications, real examples from a university book. Okay, before I go into that, this map is familiar to all of you, right? You have Palestine, then eventually it goes to smaller and smaller chunks. And they're being stripped off their lands. Genocide, culture-cide, and happening. From 1946 all the way to 2010, that's how small Palestine is in green, and then how big Israel is. Now, this is historical Armenia. Again, as a map, it's another representation, but you can see the current Armenian white and then how big it was. Okay? So I want you to go into that time where how big that thing was. At that time, there was no Georgia, there was no Iran, there was no Turkey, and there was no Azerbaijan. Very important. We have to go back in time. Okay? When we go back in time, things make sense. Now, same thing is happening to Armenia now. Smaller and smaller as lands are given here, there, being disseminated. And it's turned into like a smaller version of Spain. and Portugal kind of a way. So this is going to happen. Eventually, nothing is going to be left until we are intellectually ready, intellectually fighting this war, and physically. Now, this is the genocide map. As you can see, the entire spectrum of ancient Armenia. 90% of Armenia was lost to the genocide in 1915. 90%. And the population, about 60 more than, I think it was more than 70% of people died. They were killed, murdered, drowned, heads cut off, nipples cut off. Pregnant women died, with the sword and the baby inside. So all this happened. Well, do we actually think that memory is still not in the Armenian culture or memory? It's still there. We just don't recognize it. It just comes out in a different way. The agitation, the strife, and the conflict and all that, why people are so mad and all that, it's all part of that memory that still is intact in our DNA. Okay, these are some photos of the genocide. It's very difficult to watch this stuff and not realize how an ancient culture that gave so many firsts to human civilization has turned into ashes. Not only that, but we're still fighting. We're still fighting a cultural genocide, historical genocide that's happening. And something similar to us is the Native Americans, which I'm very involved in. I'm very glad and I'm very blessed that I've been adopted into their family. I have a eagle's feather from Crazy Horse's clan. I went through a 6-hour ceremony, and I was given a black horse as a name. And Native Americans are very humble people and very spiritual, so it's a blessing for me to work with them. And they share a lot of things that we share, especially with their genocide happening now. But their genocide is different. They're having healthcare genocide. There is no healthcare. Okay? The federal government wants that. They need their lands because they have a lot of oil and gas and lithium, right? So instead of committing direct genocide, let's give them, an asinine healthcare system. They'll just die eventually. They have diabetes, cancer, and they can't even go into a hospital for a heart surgery because they belong to another hospital across the United States. So they need to fly out an 11-year-old child, and then she dies on the way. I've lived on a reservation, and I've seen a lot of deaths. So 30,000 orphans out of the genocide. Can you imagine what's happening to the kids? Assimilation, rape, their mothers and fathers all gone. Now, this is an actual sentence from a historical book that is being instructed in the United States as a professor for I would say maybe 30 years. Can you see it? Can you read it? I want to read it to the audience. The Proto-Armenians migrated into Eastern Anatolia, the Armenian plateau, in the mid-6th century BC. Just after the fall of the Urartian Empire, there they mingled with the indigenous people. If you're a student, if you're an American student, have no idea about geography or history, for you it's okay. You just glance it through. So basically, in one sentence, it's dividing the Armenians into two, saying that one came from the other. They intermingled, and then they took over the indigenous people that never existed. So in other words, they took over them themselves. When we change the way we examine things, the things we examine change. This is another sentence from there. Actually, this is an actual sentence. The ancestors of the Armenians were invaders to the Armenian highland who have migrated to Armenia in the 6th century BC. Let that sink in. Let that detonate in your mind what they're actually saying. And nobody is kind of talking about it. And it's being reprinted. And it's being fed to people and everything else. Oh, by the way, you can research on your own. This is all out there. You can buy the book and read it. I'm not here to pinpoint any people. They know who I am. And I'm glad I'm here with my position that I hold because I want them to know that I know what they're doing. The national consciousness of the Armenians about their identity is nothing but a collection of beliefs. Okay. Not only you're an invader, you also have all these ideas we're talking about. It's just imaginary. This is the book. There are so many examples. See, the thing is, for me to explain something, I have to give you an example. I can't really say something without the entire pictures. Remember, we got to give the entire photo of the portrait of things. Well, this is one of the books. There are many like that out there. Okay, very, very, very important for you to read the stuff and address it to the university that publishes this. Now, you know who he is? Armen Ayvazyan. Now, the guy comes forward in 1998, learns about all the stuff that's happening in universities in the United States. So he publishes a book, History of Armenia, as presented in American historiography. In other words, he got the idea, okay, United States universities are falsifying Armenian history, and these professors with excellent accolades, I have researched them all. They got awards and trophies and all that for doing the great job that they do. Now, one thing about professors who falsify, there are a lot of things that they say that is true. So we're not discounting the person himself or herself. But it's also very important for them to acknowledge that you don't need to be an expert. That's the other thing I want to mention. If you need a spinal surgery, yes, you go to a spinal surgeon. But when it comes to history and comparative language, we have different opinions and we need to examine those things. So you really don't need a doctorate in history or language for you to examine history and language. It's unnecessary. That's how they kind of avoid you from examining certain things because you think that you need to go to school for it. No, you don't. You can read it yourself. There is no mystery. Whatever the professors have read, you can read. There is no special database that you need to put a PIN number in just because you're a professor because you have that data only. No. Each and every one of us can read the same things, and they pretend that we don't know what they're reading. In other words, if they write something and they're experts, then we have to take their word for it. And the thing is, here's what interesting that they do. They use each other's material. One falsifier gives the data to another falsifier. So now they're sharing books of the same thing. So they say the same thing in a different way. That's why when I published my 2014 book, I asked the audience and the readers for them to read my references first before you go read the book. Because at least now you have all that information for you to examine my data. That's how you do it. That's how, the professor does to its students. You allow them to think on their own. 4 years later, after it's published, let me retract for a second. Now, when the guy publishes this, okay, whatever culture you are, try to think the same way. Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, okay. When you're reading something and you're publishing something, you need to make sure that it's available to everybody. But this guy publishes this and nobody really read it. It is collecting dust, maybe a few hundred people who know about him, right? But it was never published. It was not massively published. So these type of important things are not being funded. I mean, where are our millionaires and billionaires? Where are they? The woods are burning. Nobody is coming to the rescue. All this today was done with our own capital. Okay? Nobody helped, even though it was going around. In other words, what I was saying is our strife is our internal battle. We try to do it as much as we can to bring this information to light. But all the other nonsense, all of a sudden, get all these grants and awards and being funded, and it dilutes people even further. So we have a huge problem. We have an intellectual war happening, and nobody's paying attention. All right, so 4 years ago, 4 years after, a guy from UCLA decides to do a rebuttal. He's from UCLA. I don't know if you know him or not, but it doesn't matter. So, as you can see, he has good accolades. I'm not discounting the guy. I'm sure he read a lot. But I read what he read. All the books that he's published, I have read the references. So there's nothing special. It's the way we examine things that changes everything, right? So he uses that book that I showed you that was falsifying information as a tool for him to do a rebuttal of Ayvazyan. Are you following me? Okay. He is using a book that's falsifying Armenian history as a defense against the guy who's saying about what's being falsified. Okay? You see the circular thing now? They're helping each other. Now, this is a quote from that book. You got to follow me on this one. That book says that, in other words, he is trying to falsify by reeling a confirmation bias statement saying that in the future, if they kind of criticize my book, it mostly has to do with nationalism and narcissism. So be careful, guys. If somebody from the future comes, like the Back to the Future movie, like a warning, they're either narcissist or nationalist. That's it. It's a university book. Obviously, it has value, right? It's not a pamphlet. It was published already. So that carries some weight. So we are at a disadvantage already, even after the publication. Now, that the title of the paper, I hope he's also paying attention. I'm sure he's looking at me right now, hopefully. It was called The Treason of the Intellectuals, a reflection on the uses of revisionism and nationalism in Armenian historiography. He already starts with that title saying that whatever I'm going to say has to do with why Armenians are so nationalistic and so narcissistic that they go against all these professors who have university titles. It's very fallacious, as you can see. It's all a fallacy. And I'm very passionate about these things, so I'm sorry if I'm too serious, but it's a serious problem. Quote from the book, paper, by the way. At the end, you can have my email. I can send you all the references that I'm talking about. Okay, so don't worry about missing it. You'll have the slides and the references. Okay, he is talking about the book that Ayvazyan wrote. Here's a quote. It constantly misrepresents the views of the author's adversaries, often by deliberately distorting passages out of their context. Pay attention to that, okay? Out of context. It's intimidating tactics of branding Western scholars, he means him, Armenia as national traitors, and its insinuations that they are paid foreign agents as poor and dangerous substitutes for scholarly thinking. So basically he's saying that I'm not a paid agent. So kind of stop offending me. I'm from UCLA. I'm going to write this. Ivaison's targets here include Robert Thompson, Nina Garsoyan, James Russell, Levon as specialists of classical and medieval Armenian history. These are the same people that are falsifying history. He's saying don't criticize them. They're experts. They're not experts of ancient history at all. At all. They have no idea what ancient history is. Okay, so in short, basically it's saying it's dangerous and everything else. Now, this is from that book that I told you about, Ararat. Read it again. The Proto-Armenians migrated into Eastern Anatolia, the Armenian Highlands, in other words, and they mingled with indigenous people. In what way is this out of context? If I'm criticizing this, if somebody wrote this, that they're invaders to their own land, is there a different way of misinterpreting this? No, right? They say exactly what they mean. So if the guy from UCLA is saying that we are wrong in criticizing these people because it's out of context, this is not out of context. They mean exactly what they mean here. So his arguments are already flawed. But he hopes that nobody pays attention to his stuff. See? Ivaizon is in Armenia, published in few documents in Armenian. Nobody reads it. But this guy's in UCLA, has a lot of audience. So guess who won? Those who didn't read this. And of course, having students read this, disseminate all this stuff. So basically now we have another problem. And they're helping each other. Whether they like it or not, they're going to help each other because now it's us versus them now, you see? Several years ago, contrary to what they're saying of the migration and invasion what, 2,600 years ago? That's what they mean. In other words, Armenians went to their own lands 2,600 years ago. You're going to love the rest of the slides, but very exciting. So they did a study by a bunch of incredible people from universities and genetics departments all across the world. Look what they had. So the Institute of Molecular Biology, Center for Geogenetics, Armenian DNA Project, all these centers came together to figure out about the Armenian genetics. Now, don't you think there's something special that they're concentrating on Armenian genetics? Okay, if we're so insignificant, why so much of a study about our genetics? I don't understand. Okay, red flag. Why spend so much money on Armenian genetics? Who cares, right? They were migrated. I mean, they're already gone anyway. Okay, let's read it together. This is one of their points of the study. So we focus on solving a long-standing puzzle regarding Armenian genetics, or it's still a puzzle. I don't know why it's a puzzle. You know, they have to write puzzle. Although the Balkan hypothesis meaning from the Balkans they came down, okay? I don't know what they're teetering around that one. Has long been considered the most plausible narrative on the origin of the Armenians. Remember when they said they migrated? So that's what they mean. They migrated from the Balkans, okay? Our results strongly rejected. They rejected. Now, this is a genetics study. On the bottom there, modern and ancient samples from the Balkans appear significantly distant from Armenian cluster. In other words, there is no relation or very small relation. Okay, this is Robert Ellis 120 years ago. 140 years ago. Just by comparative linguistics alone. He needed genetics, he didn't need archaeogenetics or anything like that. His examination in a book called The Armenian Origins of Etruscans, and Etruscans were ancestors of the Romans, right? The Romans were ancestors of Italians. Or So he said that the Armenians, like the Celts, pay attention, are now few in number. They belonged once to a longer extent of a country where they spread westward from Armenia to Italy under the names of Phrygians, Thracians, Pelasgians, Etruscans, and also spread to other locations. Very simple. We kind of test this and we come to the same conclusion now with genetics. It's the same thing. Now, how the hell did he just do with comparative linguistics? Because language is a fingerprint, never fades away. Same with other languages. If you examine it, you will know whether the language is yours, whether they took that word, or you got it from elsewhere, or it's yours. Same thing with this one. Armenian language is a fingerprint. Not only it's a fingerprint, it actually contains a lot of data in one single word. You can describe the universe in one word. Okay, here's another article from 2017 in Current Biology article. So they wouldn't say it's not scientific. And so lately we know what science means, right? All that we learned we heard the scientists, and now it's a huge problem when it comes to COVID. So anyway, the analysis of mitochondrial ancient DNA, basically it's saying that the Urartian classical and medieval Armenian skeletons have revealed that modern Armenians have the least genetic distance to them compared to the neighboring people. Another confirmation. He also says that the Armenians are also one of the genetic isolates of the Near East. Near East is the same thing as ancient Armenia. Same thing. Who share affinity with the Neolithic farmers who expanded into Europe beginning around 8,000 years ago. Well, the Neolithic revolution happened in Armenia, didn't it? Agriculture, animal domestication. There you go. Very simple. Something like this is not in a textbook. So another red flag. James Russell, you know him. From Harvard University, a Jewish American trying to learn Armenian. His doctoral dissertation was about Zoroastrianism in Armenia. Armenians were never Zoroastrian. Armenians were Mithraic. Armenians never worshipped the fire. They understood the light. There's a difference. So, of course, he has incredible accolades. I'm not discounting that. Basically, he's saying that the Armenian population crossed from southern Eastern Europe into Anatolia in the middle of the second millennium BC as colonists. Now we're colonists. We were invaders now we're colonists. And by moving farthest eastward, they took their ethnic name from the Hattian people whose state they overran. He's confusing Hattian with Hittite. But doesn't matter. As you can see, it's very asinine, but nobody is paying attention. He's from Harvard. A lot of accolades. If we don't pay attention, it's going to be a runaway train anyway. Remember that interview? Week, and he was so embarrassed that we were confronted saying that you're falsifying history, and he couldn't even speak. He was all red and sweaty. Okay, another quote. Now we're wanderers. After wandering, I like their vocabulary. After wandering for nearly 600 years, Moses 40 years, us 600 years, I don't know. From Bosphorus to central Anatolia, they, Armenians, finally found the rest. Thank goodness, we finally found. In the plains of Mount Ararat and called their national homeland. Great. Have you read this book? Have you seen this book in Armenian bookstores? I have. It's still being sold. Nobody's reading it. Now, one point I want to make. If one sentence is wrong and the rest is right, the entire book is not a bad book. I mean, they can talk about the genocide and everything else that is true. But if you're talking about somebody's foundation that is, wrong, then the entire thing is faulty. Imagine, let's say you're Irish, and I say, well, your both parents were Japanese. They migrated, and then I talk about the truthful things. You see, they kind of blend two things in. Hopefully, you don't notice. It's very easy to do, especially if you don't know any better. And I don't blame people because we're so busy with all the things that we do: gas prices, COVID, interest rates, career. But at the same time, in the background, your history is being destroyed, erased, and then you come to a point where you have completely been disappeared from the maps. And then who needs the Bentleys and everything else that you're trying to work with? Now, Armenia already has been being mentioned thousands of years ago, way before that. Akkadians did it, the Syrians did it, Sumerians. The Sumerians even told the world that our ancient homeland is in Armenia. But we'll get to that one. Pirakawi, another guy. I'm not going to concentrate too much on him because it's going to be another kind of a same indication of what he says. Armenian national epic Daredevils of Sassoon was a later Armenian version of the Persian Rostam Zag. I could only imagine what Arthur Armin would think when he read this. So, in other words, whatever is true, they put it in reverse. Whatever is yours, you got it from others. That's their tactic. Who the hell read Rostam Zal anyway? So he can say whatever he wants. Nina Garsoyan, I'm not sure whether she's alive. That I couldn't verify. But I think she's about 200 now. But the Yerevan Duni dynasty was not Armenian. A very subtle sentence, but it really destroys everything. It destroys your essence altogether. Okay, now we have Kavukjan, who can say otherwise. I'll talk about Kavukjan later a little bit, but he's saying no. The Armenian kingdom of Armenia, of the Yerevan Dunis, the same thing, was the direct continuation of Urartu without any changes within the royalty. Now, why would I choose this over this without being biased? In other words, let's not be biased here. We came, let's say from another country, we don't know Armenians, and we don't know anybody, and we're reading this stuff. Obviously you have to do your research, but the thing is, nobody has time to do the research. So if you're going to school as a student, you need to get that degree so you can get the hell out of there. But the curriculum is formed by the heads of the university for them to teach exactly what they want to be taught. It's an agenda. That's why it's a curriculum. It's an agenda. You have to follow that. Even as a professor, there are certain things you cannot say. As much as you want, as much as you disagree, you cannot say it because the university pays your salary. So it's very easy for an interest group, for them to come in to try to falsify things. They can pay. How much is the professor making now? I don't know. 80, 90,000 probably in their 70s. A falsifying group comes and says, listen, we'll give you $1 million. Can you just write the sentence? Sure. So those things happen, ladies and gentlemen. Same thing that happens in politics. If enough money comes in, sure, I'll write that law. Now, this is a Oxford Handbook of Ancient Anatolia. They have a page that says Urartian and the Urartians. It never happened. They talk about people that never happened, that never existed, basically, because that title right there is saying that they're talking about people that have nothing to do with Armenians. And this is a book that's very difficult to get. It's volume 1 by Richard Pavanesian's edition. And all those people that I showed you, they're in there with a lot of falsified information. He went all the way to Armenia to beg for people not to kind of tarnish his image, because he said the person was recording on a video saying that this book that is being taught in UCLA is not a historical book. He was caught by a phone call conversation, and then they recorded it. It's on YouTube, by the way. Are you guys okay so far? I wanna read something in Armenian, and you don't need to know who it is, but I can give you the reference. Again, I'm not pointing fingers. Tuan, I'll read it in Armenian, but I'll tell you what it is. It's pretty bad. Basically saying that the word "ar" has nothing to do with Armenians. Can you read in the back? Okay, I'm gonna give you a second for you to read it. We're good? And if you don't mind reading this one, if you could. Okay. Now, if Armenia is publishing something like this to its students, it's a bigger problem because it's an internal problem, and it can be hidden amongst it all, so people wouldn't pay attention. This creates a lot of enemies, especially those who don't disagree, because the professor said it. He has his call. So the students are going to defend the professor, and now you have hate. So falsification of information is hate speech. I'm sure you agree. Not only is hate speech, it's defamation. Two things. Israel is pretty good. They have anti-defamation. The Armenians have no. We don't have international attorneys defending defamation and falsification, do we? I don't know, an attorney. Big problem. And it's even bigger problem when you have people that have no history pretend that they do, and they try to protect that history. But people who have history is being falsified, and there's nobody there at the gate. Okay, now the slides were saying that the god R has nothing to do with Armenians. One thing about clarification, since we're on the video, the word Aryan has to do with the ethno-linguistic group. It has nothing to do with Hitler or Nazi and all that. It's a designation of people. Okay, get that straight, and hope the world understands that when we talk about an ethno-linguistic group, we're talking about their culture and heritage. We have nothing to do with World War II. So basically saying that the word Aryan came out of Armenia, and the thing is that word can only be described in Armenian. The etymological root is in the Armenian language. Armenians have more than 10,000 words that either starts with R, middle R, and ends with R. And all of a sudden, we have nothing to do with R. And R is a verb, by the way, and it's very important. The Armenian language is a functional language. It describes the world. It tells you what's happening. And the function of it all, and within the universe and within the natural world, the Armenian language is a functional, descriptive cipher. In one Armenian word, there's more data than in a big flash drive. It's very economical, by the way. Okay, Robert Ellis, the language of the Etruscans was Aryan of the Armenian form. We have another guy who's saying the same thing. So now, besides from Armenians being detached from their own land, same thing with the Native Americans, by the way, they use the word Indian. There's a reason why they're using the word Indian by the federal government, because when the time comes, they can always say you were a newcomer anyway from India or from Asia. So we need those lands. Say same thing with this. Armenians are being detached from their lands because you're migrated and you're an invader. Now, not only are they detaching themselves as people, now their language has nothing to do with it. So now all of a sudden you're just a nomad who are wandering, and you found a resting place, and the language you speak has nothing to do with you. Simon Payaslan, another guy. Again, this is just an example from a historical. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Okay, History of Armenia. I have that book too. Get a copy. It's a good idea to get copies of these books. Whether they have falsified information or not, it's still a valuable thing. It's a book. He has a page on Urartians, and he says that the Urartians, when he says the Urartians, he already is saying that first the Urartians, then the Armenians. It's the same people. The Urartians had their own indigenous culture and language, which were mixed. Now we're mixed with Hurrians and Hittites and Aramaic and Assyrian influences, and then the combination of these cultures and languages set the foundation for the Armenian culture and language, although the latter is of Indo-European origin. He has one thing right. Armenian is of Indo-European, and the word actually Indo-European was called Aryan before, and then when World War II came, they don't want to kind of offend anybody, so they turned into Indo-European. So, Tuan, this is something that also is important, because when you have these discussions and you talk about, Aryan language and all that, it's not really to talk about Hitler at all. It's about the language itself, which he was confused anyway. But the historical will say another thing, that the Hurrians did not disappear from history away to the north in their homeland, Armenian homeland, that they went. They entrenched themselves and built up the kingdom of Urartu. So the Hurrians, the Armenians are the same. Urartians, Armenians are the same. It's the same people in a different way of saying things. Now, another quote. Hurrians were from Armenia. It's very simple. Yeah, obviously. Because the word Hurrian, Hur is an Armenian word. So once you say it's an Armenian word, then they start attacking it. That has nothing to do with you. You see, they always are trying to follow a way to get detached from your language. What is this? How do you say in Armenian? I was talking about the Hurrian, so no. Herahan. So Hur means fire. So you take the fire out. Remember the Armenian language being a descriptive language? Herahan. What is this? Heratsan. In other words, a fire disseminator. Autonomous. Tan. Tight. What is this? Hertir. See, it has to do with fire. You say 3 words that has to do with fire, and then the argument's already done. You can prove now that no, because nobody else has this etymology in their language. The game is over. See, 2 slides is enough. Museum of Anatolian Civilization. It's very big. It's in Turkey, and it has a lot of stuff there that they preserve. Remember the map of the big Armenian territory before? Now, can you imagine now in current day how much land has been lost and how much that they find that never tell the Armenians what they have found? So all that they find, they go to the museum, and not a single word Armenian is mentioned in the entire museum or its entire description. Yes, they preserve it, but they don't talk about it at all because they need to, remove you from history altogether. Now, they go all the way to 8000 BC. You have the Paleolithic and the Paleolithic, Neolithic, Early Bronze, Assyrian, Hittite, Phrygian, Late Hittite, Urartian, Lydian, Classical period. So can you imagine all that was in that region? Here's another proof. So that region had all the stuff that we're connected with, but incidentally, now it's in Turkey, so they need to do this. In other words, now they're creating their own history to make a fact that they were there and Armenians were. Now you see how bad it is? Now, on one side, you have Armenians being migrated there and they're wanderers. On the other side, Turkey is publicizing all this without telling about the Armenians. So now we have 2 battles going on. And we're worried about, gas prices. But now Robert Ellis, remember the words Lydian and Phrygians and all that? Well, Robert Ellis said Herodotus and Eudoxus have classed Phrygians and Armenians together, and so do I. And linking Phrygians, Lycians, Lydians, Carians, and Pelasgians with the Greek is erroneous and inadmissible. They rather need to be linked to the Armenians. So all those periods that the museum covers, basically Robert Ellis already said that those are the same people with a different representation in history. So it all needs to say Armenian Lydian, Armenian Pelasgian, Armenian. It has to be mentioned, otherwise you disappear. Robert Ellis, Armenian conquests of Europe were during prehistoric and pre-traditional times. This is one of the key quotes that he made, and many people don't really realize the repercussions of this quote. He's basically saying that those people, the Armenian Highlanders, went all over Europe during pre-traditional times. There was no record at those times. So obviously we don't have that habit. They didn't have the capability of, posting something on Facebook, and they didn't need to take photos of everything that they eat. You know what I'm saying? For them, it's a normal course of life. So obviously there has to be a gap in records, but it doesn't mean that they weren't there. And we can test it that they were there by language, genetics, so forth. But language is key. Now the Etruscan, if you compare the languages of some of the words, and by the way, I have tested this. So if somebody comes and says, no, it's not true, yes, it is. Just because a word alters just a bit doesn't mean that, see, this is written in English, so never mind the letters themselves. It could have been pronounced a different way, but the idea stays the same. So whatever is Etruscan, those words are the same thing in Armenian. I'm gonna go to the point of what I mean by doing these comparisons, so you'll see why is this important. Have you heard of Vladimir Levenstein before? He's an information theorist, or was an information theorist, and so he found a way for him to figure out how 2 things relate by a mathematical formula. And this is the formula. Don't panic. We're not doing statistics or mathematics. I just want to show you the formula, and I'm going to break it down what he means. He's saying that if you compare 2 words, you would know how many changes you got to do between those languages for them to sound the same thing. So let's say I'm just going to read a definition about basically it also includes insertions, deletions, and substitutions of the letters. And I have an example so you'll figure out what I'm talking about. So let's take the word Ara in Armenian and then Ra in Egyptian. Ara or R is the Armenian god, and then Ra is the Egyptian god. In reverse. So if we use the Levenstein score, what do you think it will be? Between, let's say, 1 to 5, for example. The score will be 1, because we only need to add an A to make it Ara in Egyptian. So according to the Levenstein distance formula, the lower the number, the closer the thing it is to one another. But we're not just dealing with the way it looks like. We also need to also compare whether they're the same thing. In other words, they sound the same thing and they mean the same thing. That's key. But Levenstein's distance did not include in the formula. It was just to do with a comparison. But when he did the examination of languages, the Levenstein distance formula proved or showed or concluded that the Armenian language is the closest to the mother tongue of all Indo-European languages. So if you take, let's say, a mother tongue and you compare it to all the Indo-European languages, the Armenian is the closest to the mother tongue. Okay? Now we have statistics involved as far as examining the words. You have seen this map before, or the tree. It kind of is the same thing. It talks about how, mother tongue sprung and then all the rest of the branches. As you can see, the Ariano-Greco-Armenic is at the bottom here. And I'll show you why this should be this. Okay, I'll explain why. Because when you're a linguist, by the way, Indo-European studies started in Europe. And some British dudes saw similarities between Sanskrit and Greek. They got excited. They started to examine them with no people inside that actually spoke the language. You see, it's a runaway train again, whatever they published. And also, at that time, you were funded to publish by a funding source. So your book had authority over a person who didn't publish anything, right? So now we're kind of trying to re-examine all those things. And this is the problem. When you have comparative linguists, they take all that in the curriculum and then they study. And now all the comparative linguistic professors say the same thing over and over again. Because why? Because it was written over there. Why even change things around? It's problematic. So a little bit closer, you have Ariano-Greco, you have the Balto, and of course it goes to Luwian, Lydian, and Hittite over here, and then Greek over here. So basically the Armenian and Greek were very close, and then Greek went this way, and then Armeno-Aryan. They still call it Armeno-Aryan. They still call it that because you can't get away from not doing it. This is in the early 19th century. And I'll send the references too. So basically it says, it is certain that there was a primeval speech, in other words, a mother tongue, called at the present by scholars the Aryan tongue. At that time, they were okay saying these words. So that it was once spoken by the people who lived in the high tablelands of Armenia and Iran. That is, was carried to Europe by the inhabitants who emigrated from land now by the Shah, that Greek, Latin, Celtic, Irish. So basically he's saying that, okay, it was Aryan language, it was called this, and then it was born between Armenia and Iran. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we can pinpoint where we're going to. There is, in other words, there is no Proto-Indo-European language. It's just a hypothetical language of their tongue. So for you as a linguist, you need to just be careful and say, okay, there was once a mother tongue, and then everything else came through it. So it doesn't matter as long as you say that careful. Now, how do you say this in Armenian? Tet. If I take the word tet, this is tet. Titer is different. Titer doesn't have hair. But this is tet. Now, the word for moth is tet, and even though Sumerian, Basque, and Armenian are said to be different, all three say the same thing. And I have verified this, by the way, by the Sumerologist and the Bascologist. Yeah, they say the same thing. But if you go around and try to examine all that, they're going to say they're unrelated. So we have to stop saying things are unrelated. We need to examine things. Well, what happened was Gianfranco Forni, who I spoke with, decided to examine Basque as an Indo-European language, even though they say it's not. It certainly is. I wrote a book on it, but anyway. Another quote: the Indo-Germanism decreased the significance of the ties of Iberians, Basque, and Armenians to their Aryan roots. So we already have conversations that Armenians and Basque and all that, they were all interconnected. They were Indo-European also. If you want to learn more about the Armenian origins of Basque, this was published several years ago, and this was an attempt for me to resurrect Vahan Setyan's extraordinary work. Nobody else has done it. It's the only book in the English language that talks about this. And this is now at the University of Las Vegas Library. And I published this in 2017. So far, no rebuttals, no refutation. It's not going to happen. When it comes to my projects, I always do my homework before I publish. It's not going to happen. They're not going to do it. So, diamond, how do you weigh it? Karat. If you examine the word karat in any language, you don't find the root word. You can't find it. You can try it too, okay? Don't take my word for it. Try it. Now, we have two possible explanations for karat. Either we can say that kar hadik, because they used to, remember, they used to weigh something, and you put a rock on one side and then the item on the other, kar hadik. Or we can also say that it's gari hadik, because gari was barley and it was very valuable as far as for weighing certain things. So the use of barley was able to kind of figure out what the weight would be. So we already have an answer right there as far as weighing something. Karat. So karat turn into karat. Now you're talking about, several thousand years ago. Obviously, the pronunciation changes, the use changes, but you see the essence stays the same. And if we don't talk about this, it's gonna disappear. Let's take the word enough. It also means full. So I had enough, I'm full. If you examine the word enough, you're gonna be going through a rabbit's hole. It's a disaster. Everybody says one thing. No, it's Albanian. It's German. It's English. It's French and all that. It's this kind of a mess. And see, the thing is, the comparative linguists take pride in all this because they took their time in examining all this. Albanian, and as you can see, the further it goes down, the meaning, the cognate goes away, the meaning goes away, but they're proud of themselves because they've spent so much time on it. Let's just publish this. That's what it means. Who the hell spends time in trying to figure out whether that linguist or comparative linguist wrote the wrong etymology of that? Nobody does it. But it's the essence. It's the essence. We're trying to save people. If we need to go down that deep, we have to do it. We have to save the people that way. Now, But now it's the same thing as being had enough. Leovin. So enough is enough. Very simple. Over there, they're fighting. No, it's ours, and then we're sitting like that. Enough is enough. Now, yes, it changes the way you pronounce it, but the essence is the same. You really don't need to, because now it says the same thing and also means the same thing. Those two tests. Murder. The word murder. I just took it from one of the historical linguistics, and they say that it's Proto-Indo-European. How do you say to die in Armenian? Yeah, but it says Proto-Indo-European. They could easily say Armenian because it's the only Armenian that is closest to the Proto-European, and I think that Proto-Indo-European is the Armenian itself. That's why we see. Again, we make this face when they fight over, and then we know the answer. So that's what I mean. This should be here. Because if you examine the Proto-Indo-European root words, they're all Armenian. We really don't need to kind of create an extraordinary layer. There is no need. But there is a need if they want to hide something, and it's happening. So we can see it. Armenian churches, beautiful architecture, and we have one of the finest, one of the oldest, and this is typically in Armenian architecture. You can't say it's not. You can't say it's not, even if you try to, unless they keep saying it's not. First, this is part of ancient Armenia in, Ani and so forth. So it's being destroyed. Obviously, nobody's paying attention. That's why I'm involved with my complaints to UNESCO, because they really need to pay attention. But since I'm part of government now, I want to stress the importance of that. So in Georgia, they would take this and then they would kind of shave it, remove all the Armenian markings, and then write something in Georgian. It becomes Georgian. To a point where there's another one, or the Khachkars in Nakhichevan, remember? And then you have destruction happening by Azeris. Why would you destroy an ancient culture's relics if you're not trying to hide something? Why? I mean, it's a privilege to find something too. So how can you call it your own lands when you're destroying what's on those lands? I mean, beyond that, what else is there? Whatever. The more you go deeper into the hole, the more Armenian you're gonna find. So, however you look at it, you are going to unearth an ancient civilization. If we don't pay attention, the Armenian churches become Georgia's churches. Do you realize how bad this is? Now, whether you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. This is one of the architectural review, by the way. Many people go here for advice and so forth. It's a very reputable site. They call it Georgia because nobody's paying attention. Of course. Why not? If the gold doesn't mean anything to you, you're not paying attention, another person is going to come and get it. Period. And Armenian history is laced with gold. If you don't pay attention, they're going to take it. All the stuff that's showing, there was a photo, they call that Georgian, by the way. And then there's this, the hexagon there, you see there? Okay. Armenians were the first to use it way before it was adopted by Israel and the Jews, way before, thousands of years before. We just never paid attention. Because this can be found all in Armenia, including 5,000 years ago on a dagger. Okay. That's what happens when we don't pay attention. The swastika, actually, it's a sign of life. Buddhists use it, Jains use it, everybody uses it. It's very important. Circle of life, universe, you name it. It's all called that. The north, east, west, south, north star, and its circle, however you call it, we had that. And it was all over Armenia. These were found in Armenia and so forth. And these are the oldest swastikas, go back to tens of thousands of years, and Armenian petroglyphs, you see. When I talk about abstract writing, this is what I mean. This is very abstract. It's kind of they're trying to write something. And then, of course, it went from Armenia to Buddhism and then to Indian culture. And then it was. So when Armenians went out there during pre-traditional times, that's what they meant. They take all this with them. Nothing is recorded. And then thousands of years later, they're using it. No, it's ours now. Of course. Why would they remember even that somebody took it from there? But we have a source of where it is. This is the oldest thing. And this was all connected to the way they looked at the stars and the galaxies, and that the way they imagined how the universe works and so forth. So this is all. Can you imagine? 14,000 years ago, there was no light. They were in darkness for 8 hours. Can you imagine how beautiful the poetry they can write if they're under the stars for 8 hours? I know this because when they did the Native American ceremony, I was in a Hogan. It started about 10 p.m. and ended at 4 a.m. I was in the dark for 6 hours by Navajo prayer for 6 hours, constant. I had anxiety. It was my first time. You don't know what's happening. But when I went out there and I looked at the stars, I saw galaxies on galaxies. So that was only 8 hours. Imagine constantly you have those people who are examining the stars. That's a reflection of all that. So the Armenian letters are very, very important. You want to take a break? Okay. Break? Yeah. Okay. You're not bored? No, I'm all right. I'm calm. So Armenian letters 36. Thank you for Messer Mashtots for reintroducing it to the system. Reintroducing it. Armenian letters were there a long time, and I'm going to show you some things that maybe most of you haven't seen. And of course, good old Hajj with his examination of the petroglyphs. You go from 15,000 of the animals that you saw. All this is in Sunik and Ukhtazar and Jermasur mountains. All that. And then eventually it turns into kind of art, and then eventually the alphabets, and then the current form that we have. So he saw the progression. And of course, this is closer to this. I'm trying to find a good copy, so I had the best copy if I could. So he basically said that 15,000 years you had the petroglyphs, and then now the Neolithic, and then eventually the Mesropian, starting 406. This is another book. This is an Armenian book, and there are many Armenian books in Armenia that's collecting dust. I always emphasize this. We have extraordinary books out there, but it's never being published in English. Might as well just not even publish them at all. Who's going to know? Nobody reads it. That's why I'm doing this presentation in English. Yes, it's with an accent, but yes, I'm doing it in English because the world needs to know. The world needs to know. By saving Armenian history, we're saving world history, because we're allowing others to use this mechanism for them to protect their own culture from falsification and disinformation. This is relevant to all. That's why the language as a fingerprint was very welcome in India and in Ireland. because they saw their roots of Armenianism at the same time how the world was connected. You see, they look at it different. You remember him? Veltman? Some of you know him, maybe most of you don't. He was a Canadian historian, and we used to speak before he died from COVID. Or, you don't have to believe that it was COVID, but the records say he died of COVID. And we used to talk as far as Armenia. This is his last photo before he died. He was very knowledgeable in ancient alphabets. He examined all of them. His book is available, by the way. You can buy it from London, and then they can ship it to you. It's a good idea to have it. The Armenian alphabet is key in there. And he actually examined also Leonardo da Vinci's geometrical works. So he was kind of all over the place, but he was very, very knowledgeable, very sincere, very nice guy. So he said the Armenian alphabet is 17,000 years old. That changes that. If you have an alphabet 17,000 years, then you have your language going back 45,000 years. That's why Heroni said that. You want to see his lecture for a few minutes? See him saying that? Here we go. 2013. Sorry about that. Huh? He said what he said over there. I just wanted to hear it from him. Try one more time, but if not, I'll send it. Too bad it doesn't show. And I spent a lot of time on it too. Sorry. Too bad. I know, right? So believe me, he said that. And definitely. So when he said 17,000 years, and then the guy up front goes, "Excuse me, sir, did you say what?" Says, "Yes, 17,000 years." 17,000. It was a very interesting conversation. Just that. I mean, I'm sure it was a shocker all over. I mean, he's a reputable guy. He examines all the alphabets that I've seen. Why would he say it's 17,000 years? Because he can connect to the petroglyphs of the Armenian highlands. Now, the guy's brave enough to do it, which I'm glad. And of course, our gigantic Paris Heroni, astrophysicist. He was really an extraordinary man, and his book actually should be read by all. It's in Armenian and English at the same time. I wanted to have another copy in English. I think I got it for $130 in April books. Very expensive, but it's worth having it. At least I can give it to my son. So he does talk about Armenian language springing about 45,000 years ago, going down. Yeah, all these letters right here are all part of the petroglyphs and hieroglyphs in Armenia. So Mashtots didn't invent anything. You can't invent something where you need language and literature for you to give it to the next generation to come. They need to architecture, knowledge, and all that. You need to tell them. You need to write it down. This is a 1883-84 photo of an Armenian priest, and they have the Urartian script and the Armenian script next to each other on the cross dome. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this, I personally believe that Armenian alphabet, the way we write today, existed the same time that the Araratian script was like this. This was for more internal secret communication. This was more out there on the cave. Because this was a secretive language, it had a lot of information on it. I'm sure we have lost the cipher. We have lost so much. After the destruction, when Christianity came, they destroyed everything. They killed everybody, all the libraries and books and everything else. And then 100 years of darkness. And then all of a sudden, we have churches and we have priests. So we're missing 100 years of darkness. A lot of things can happen. Memory can be faded. If you want to destroy a generation or people, just kill them by 4 generations. They're never going to know what happened in 100 years. Never. You not even think that something happened. See? It's all gone. So when they say, truth always reveals itself under the sun one day, that's not true. If it's destroyed and evaporated, the truth will never come back. This is Urartian, and as you can see, you have the Armenian letters right here. Hittite. You see this? You see it? I'm gonna show you something. This is Portasar. Lion here, lion here, lion here, lion here. That's right. This is 12,000 years. Now, 12,000 years later, you have something like this. Everybody's completing the same thing now with Armenian letters. Another Hittite. You have. I want to show you this before I start showing quotes. People like quotes. I kind of help them out. You don't have to read the entire book. Okay, Hilbrecht, he said Hittite writing was invented by the forefathers of the modern Armenians. Hittite. Almost everything we know about the Hittite is old Armenian. Hittites were always represented like modern Armenians in Egyptian monuments by Lushen. Hittite inscriptions require the Armenian language to be understood. Require. You see how much history is being just by not including Hittite as part of the Armenian Association. Armenians reminds us of Hittite in many ways. They cannot be separated. Mitanni. I do talk about Mitanni, but I sometimes try to emphasize. Now you see how the slides are connected. I'm jumping all over the place, but it's connected. You know what the capital of Mitanni was? Okay. Who has Vachagan? This one. Only Armenians have Vachagan. And it was the capital of Mitanni. Mitun, you mean like one house? Like a consolidated house? Mitanits. Now you see Hurrians over here. We already have covered that. Nairi, Mitanni. All this is happening here. All of a sudden, they don't relate to one another. You know the book. And this is Petri's book. He says that Mitanni was Armenian, and then Queen Tai, mother of Akhenaten in Egypt, was Armenian. And we recently know that there were genetic studies done that Queen Tai had the closest affinity to Armenians. And even the reconstruction was Armenian based. And I can send you the scientific material too, but yeah. So, you have 150 years ago, a person writing something, and then we have genetics to prove it. Now even reconstruction. So you see. This is a page from my book. I kind of wanted to show you this so that way, if you go back to the book, you can see that I write about all this and the references pertaining to what we're discussing. Because we need to connect all the references for the audience, for the readers, so that way they don't think that we're just quoting or misquoting certain things from certain books. So this is Mitani, the lion and eagle. We have a lion and eagle in the Korean Armenian symbol. This is Sumer with the head and that star. This is Tigran the Great with the head and the star. The point is that the Armenian culture had a continuous flow without any disruption. Continuous. They were just different phases with different names and different representations. They're all the same. Because their symbolism tells us that. The language tells us that. It's the same. They're just like, again, they don't have to take photos of everything that they do. They were just living their lives and representing their life through symbology. And that's what they did. A red herring is a logical fallacy, something that they do to distract you from something. Have you noticed that they have a lot of, as Armenian land is getting smaller and smaller, you see the neighboring countries wanting to claim more and more. Now they call it their own ancient lands. You heard it, right? That's a red herring. So in other words, we don't need to prove something, but all of a sudden we're in a position of proving because we have so much pressure that we have to prove it, constantly prove it, while another major thing is happening on the other side. That's what's happening. We're proving something we shouldn't, but now we have to because those people that don't relate, and the more they say the false thing over and over again throughout generations, it's going to become repeat the same thing over and over again. It's going to become true. So that's exactly what's happening right now, and but at the same time, they're trying more to get lands that doesn't belong to them in culture, but we're trying less for us to protect what we got left. It's very paradoxical. And it's very concerning. This is Echmiadzin. This was the first cathedral built in Armenia when Gregory came and put the new faith into the people there. There was a temple found underneath. And obviously all the oldest Armenian churches are built on Armenian old temples. All of them. All the oldest ones, at least. And so they had to do it because they need to use the infrastructure. So this was a new addition. This was all under it was the same. However, we do have evidence that even the old temples thousands of years ago did have this. But in essence, all the way whatever had the structure, it was used for the new church. We always call this Quran. Right, in churches, they call Quran. This is not a Quran where you do your Christian, baptism and so forth, or whatever you do, ceremonies, this is not a slab where you kill a bull. They try to tell you that, but it's not. Concentrate on the word Quran. Quran means Quranal. It means to go deeper. That means that this had a priest there, and he would have the library and a book. He would bring the book, and then he would Quranal, or go into the depth of the book to give somebody some information. A farmer would come and say, "Listen, my crop has died. What should I do?" Wait a minute. You go get a book. He would Quranal into the information, and then this is what's called in ancient times, the temple, Dachar, to give char, to find a solution for something, right? So the guy was in Quran, he was giving char, a solution to a problem. Very simple. Our language has all the information, so we have to pay attention. Was that clear on that one, or should I? Okay. El mejor. Sumer, Armenia. Koranan? Yeah, that's right. The worshippers of Kaldi in Urartu, he means, came from Armenia. They were the original Celts, a mountain race. Sarkis Ivaizan actually had a big book that he tried to compare the languages of Urartian and Armenian. And you see, that's another red herring. They're trying to kind of force Armenians to prove something. But unfortunately, there are people in Armenia who think that Urartu has nothing to do with Armenians. But they teach that in university, by the way, so it's not only here. So with his calculations, you have a lot of words that's similar and the same. He proved it already. We don't need to go any further. It's proved. Game is over. We just need to publish and relay this information so new books can come. Unfortunately, we don't have the professors to do it. They don't have the balls to do it. So we got to do it another way. Ladies, my apologies on that one. The Musasir temple or Ardeni temple. It was in Urartu, Armenia, and it was built in 825 BC. And then the Assyrian king was very fond of it, so he brought people over, so they plundered it, they pillaged it. They took everything away. That's where Assyrians learned about iron. They were using copper and bronze for war material, and they go to Armenia and they discover iron. In July of 2014, the long-lost Musasir temple was found, or they think it was found. And after so many years, they think that they found the remnants of Musasir temple. And Professor Zamwa, sent the data of what was presented at the symposium regarding the discovery. And this is the Musasir temple they think that they have found, which is near Lake Urmia. And this is all the things they found, the temple. Pillars and all that, because they said that a lot of people were just taking things out of there and for thousands of years. You can imagine what happens to something that it's not maintained. This was found in Musasir. You see the goat? This is in Musasir. It's the same thing. This is, I don't know, maybe more than 10,000 years old. But what I'm saying is, like, look at the similarity. It's the same thing. You have this in Hittite. You see this? And you have this in Mexico. This was the carpet that Hitler had that was destroyed by the fire. All these designs, and now you have this. So this into that carpet. I mean, you can imagine the time segment between the two, that this information was relayed. How the hell did that happen? You've been here before? Yeah. Gerard was a Mithrai cave before it was turned into a Christian thing. That's why, hence the cave, because Mithra was born out of a cave. That's why all the ancient stuff is in the caves. It was built in a cave. So, and they started putting crosses. Obviously, the cross is a very ancient thing for Armenians. It goes back to immemorial times, but it wasn't this way, but we have that. Let me take you closer. You see this? Okay. Same this. So the symbology already tells you that there is a continuum of information, and they had to show it that way. Look at the time distance between the two, and we have that. This is Sumer. You see this? This is Portasar. Okay, Portasar was discovered in 1990s. Rediscovered in 1990s. This is an old. So this could not have known about this or this about this unless they're connected. Right? They didn't copy each other. They were discovering at the time. So, and you know what this is called? Professor Schulman, before he died in 1999, he wanted to examine how things were sounded when he read the Portasar carvings and all that. He called this, now, without knowing Armenian. So he said, now, with Armenian, now we have evidence that some of the words that are found there, that a German guy, not knowing Armenian, said, no, but maybe this is no. Something that was brought here. I'm new, but I'm concentrating. And I have his original work, by the way. I asked the family to provide a copy if I'm publish something. So I'm not just saying. Of course, I just showed the connection to the Sumerian. Can you hear me okay? Good. Nemrut, Omega time, the symbol right here. We have the Garni symbol, and then we have the Mayan symbol. See right here? You see that? And you see this? It's all the same. This is Garni, this is Portas. Check. We have this thing about pixels. Just the idea of Mike there. Just because we have a big entire race. Hike as so very simple, because the Hicks were also portrayed when they were lighter skin compared to some of the counterparts. This is our gate. So what we're doing is we're just connecting the dots. More of this association we have, we can find connection. So now we're venturing back to Sumer. Okay. So if we're migrated from elsewhere, how do we find connections in Sumer? Oh, by the way, several years ago they did a DNA test to see whether the Arabs and the Sumerians were the same in Iraq, and who was indigenous and who was not. So they determined from the skeletal remains that the first of all, Indians from India had nothing to do with Sumer, the Arabs there, and then two, that Sumerians were indigenous to Sumer. In other words, they didn't come from elsewhere. So they're basically talking about their main people. The majority of Sumerian words were Aryan, Armenian particularly. So this talk about Sumerian not being an isolate or not being connected to Armenian, well, it's not true, because Sumerian is just an Armenian dialect. Very simple. It solves the problem. It's just an Armenian dialect, like any other dialects. And I'm going to... Okay, Armenians have more than 100 dialects. If two dialects talk with one another, you won't understand them at all. You would think that it's another language. So, just because we don't understand that dialect, it doesn't seem, let's say, close to our hearts and our ears. It doesn't mean that it's not our own dialect. It is an examination. So if two neighboring dialects in Armenia cannot understand each other, how can other dialects that have ventured far away would be understood unless you go deep down to the root word of things. I know it's a Friday. I know you need to go home. I'll keep it short, okay? Huh? There'll be part two, yes, if you allow me to. But I need to go home. I know it's Friday night, so I'll make it quick. We have all these, symbology in Egypt as far as the Ankh all over the Egyptian. The thing is, the Sumerians had it before. So you see right here, it was already in use before the Egyptians did. And then Ankh, which in Egyptian means, cross of life, or Ankh or Kyank is life. So it is connected. Doesn't mean if the letter falls off, you got a problem. We don't. It's the same. And of course, we have the stars in Nemrut and in Tigran the Great. We have Sumer. We have here. And as you can see, they're kind of trying to tell us something that, listen, we're all the same. We're just relaying this information to you. But somehow all this was lost. We just put it together. So the Musa, it's around here somewhere. In the same vicinity as ancient Armenian. So we can kind of prove that. When it comes to Armenians, this is the University of Tartu. And basically they're saying that the Great Armenian reached deep into Eastern Anatolia down to the Mediterranean, historical important places, lie around Lake Van. In other words, they're saying that the Armenian geography was much bigger than that. Well, yeah, it was. But I'm just pointing out how far they go as far as universities for them to prove something that we already know. This is not in the historical books that I show you as far as the Armenians where they came from. All that they could have included this, but they're not. All right, this is from 1863. 1863, written by a bishop. This is before the Hamidian massacres, by the way. You see, I'm proving you that before the Armenian genocide, there was much more data as far as their knowledge of how influential the Armenian language was. And then after the genocide came, we fell behind 120 years. In other words, we are missing 120 years of a battle. 120 years. All right. Let's read it together. Okay. If you could, can you just read it? If you can read it. Okay. The Armenians were called by other nations Arameans. Aramean is an Armenian word. Aram. I don't know why they call it Semitic, but it's not. Okay. Paris Heroni actually read one of the slabs that supposedly Aramaic. This was it. And he was able to very easily read it by even kind of changing some alphabetical order of words, and he was able to decipher it in a sense where, Artaxerxes, that this is my land, and this is the kind of the stone to represent that. He's reading it. When they say about the Nemrut that has nothing to do with Armenians, we can actually prove it because the king, Comagny, reading Mithra, is distinctly wearing an Armenian crown. Very simple. Just because you have Greek letters on it, it doesn't mean that its foundation is Armenian. Same thing with, let's say, here's an example. I get iron from China for me to use it for a building. And I built the building. Is it a Chinese building? It's not. but I need to acknowledge that I got my iron from China. Same thing with this one. Just because, all the surrounding things are not kind of indicative of strictly Armenian, you still need to acknowledge its foundation. And the king is already the foundation. It shows that it is an Armenian kingdom. And of course, Tigran the Great, here's his crown, as we can prove that, it is the same crown. As far as for the language dispersion, we already had people from UCLA and Georgia saying that it was diffused out of Armenian highlands and went to different places. And of course, we have more and more support that the Armenian Plateau was the place where all the language was disseminated. So all this goes back to the falsifications. I keep trying to show you that, unless we use the data that we have to confront, to publish, to talk about these things, to make a quick correction as soon as possible, we're going to fade. We are going to fade. And we're kind of losing the war. But let me see. I wish I could show a video by a German. Let's see if I can show it. And it was a German television show, and Atkinson and Gray, and they were talking about the origins of Indo-Hebrew languages. So they said that he took root in Armenia. But I'll send it to you and this in the video. So. And even Brian Hinckley said, as far as for the Armenian language, were originators of letters and cultures which the world inherited from Greek and Romans. Greeks were merely the disseminated. It's very important because if you look at dictionaries and everything else, mathematics and philosophy, you always have the Greeks and the Latin as the forerunners. They don't talk about where they took that information from. The whole world, European culture considers itself the heir to the ancient Greek and Roman civilizations, not realizing that both of them, in their turn, originate from ancient Armenian civilization Vahan Setyan. So they keep trying to tell this information to people that can read and write and all that, but somehow we lost that thread. And I think that Greek and Latin is an easy access to something because we don't need to really go back that far. But the thing is, if we don't do that, we lose the entire universe of people that came before them. Let's take some words that we can easily convert into Armenian without really trying that much. Because Troy, we have Tej, God Tej, and now Armenians had literature, so they had to have God of literature, obviously. And then Cosmos, you can do this yourself too. Don't take my word for it. I mean, Cosmos is already a Greek suffix. Let's put that on the side. Cosm is structure, and Cosm is structure in Armenian. Mathematics, matemat, even we call this mathematik. Humanity started counting with fingers. It has to be mathematik. And the thing is, in Greek, if you look at the root word of mathematics, you're not going to find it. It just says that it means the art of counting. Anarchia, anarchy, without a king, anarcha, which means something without a king becomes anarchy with no ruler. Cancer. In Greek, they say it's come from that it looks like a crab with the veins. We really don't need to go through that if we can say kavskep. And kavs means nutritional deficiency, and then kef means sickness. So cancer is a sickness of nutritional deficiency. Imagine kavskep is said by a Greek. They can't pronounce it anyway. Name me somebody that can kavskep. They can do it. Metal, metallion in Greek, metal. Why can we say metal? When you put there's a lot of salt that's generated if metal is exposed to some water soluble. So we already have alcohol in there as part of the chemistry. So all that was known in Mesopotamia came from Armenia. Armenia is the absent fragment of the entire mosaic of the ancient world civilization. This was found after they discovered all these horses and skeletons and so forth. They keep trying to say astrology, all the 12 constellations were found in Armenia in this rough form. We also have that. I have many more slides, and they tell me it's time. So, just tired? You want to go home? I don't know. You let me know. But I can turn into a part 2 next time. But I have a lot of slides. We can be here for a year, and without any notes, I can talk for a year. Because I speak from the heart, and memory hasn't failed me yet. But if you guys gotta go home, we can go home. But I want to give you one last thing, that all the animal domestication, sheep, pigs, and cattle. As you can see, this is the Armenian highlands. So obviously, when you have agriculture, you have animal domestication, you need to relay information to your colleague, right? You need structured language. You need to tell the guy, listen, when you go over there and you pick up that slab, make sure it's not too heavy, and then you bring it here and you construct. You gotta have you need to figure out how to speak. So either language influenced agriculture, animal domestication, or the force of that influenced language. That is a difficult thing to think. But I personally think that language opened up human civilization to go from hunter and gatherer to civilization. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, brother. That was great.
Impressive as always, my friend.
That was a lot of information to digest. I hope you guys.
Sorry for the fire hose, but sometimes you know.
So, all this information that you presented, what we need to figure out is how do we fight this?
Yeah, how do we stop it?
We had one of our episodes yesterday. We had, again, constant questions: how do we fight this? What is the solution? And I think the solution is that we need to start reading more books and sharing it with one another, teaching our kids. There's amazing books out there that have so much information about our history.
Funding more movies.
We
talked about it last night.
You mentioned about the billionaires we have. There are stories that talk about, let's call it Urartu, but it's actually the Ararat Kingdom, that are factual, that can turn into movies or even docuseries that will just wow people around the world. So what we want to do, the point of all this is for you guys to know that there is this information war going on, and we need to make sure that we fight back. And the way we fight back is individually learning about our history, learning the facts, and sharing it, making it a dinner conversation. Instead of talking about pointless things at dinner, talk about our history with your kids. Don't make it this kind of heavy, but make it light. Tell the stories. But first, you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
And at the same time, share it with your non-Armenian friends or family members, because they will see eventually how we are all connected together. Because that's where civilization began.
Yeah.
So,
and I would also add that something more that we can do is we need to create an international front of anti-defamation and hate speech. That's why I asked Tuan to come, because he's always exposed to circumstances of hate and how Washington should address it. And I think that is an international subject that will require international attorneys to make a point at the UN, UNESCO level for us to change. But yes, documentaries, but you have to make a powerful change, because it will show others, all the cultures, that you can do the same, serve yours. But at the same time, even,
Fire with fire.
yeah, we have to talk. Our children and the youth, they need to write and publish more. This is the information age. We need to translate all the good books in Armenian into English, right, for people to know. Maybe people like just to read the information.
Yeah. There's amazing information out there on books. We've talked about this on our show, that to translate them. If there's, like I said, the wealth we have, we need to bring it to the forefront.
Of course.
So, having said that, I want to thank a few people who helped us put this together. For short notice, I mean, we did this in a matter of 2.5 weeks. First of all, Vahan, thank you for coming up with this idea and, again, joining forces with us. I want to thank the Glendale Youth Center, Karazim, sitting in the back, for helping us put this together. I want to thank all the artists that you got, all this artwork you see here and outside. One of the artists is actually Lucy Gregory, the outside artist. She's amazing. I'm sure you guys saw this stuff. She's actually going to donate one of her pictures to the organization here, and it's called Night Flowers, which is worth $4,000. She donated it to you guys, so thank you to her. So all the pictures here are from artist Tigran Bohumian. Tigran Bohumian. By the way, these are available if you want to purchase them, so you can approach the artist and talk to them if you're interested. I want to thank Sadme from Gabriela's Eats for helping us with the catering. If you guys, help, if you have another event, please get her information and use her catering service. Let's see, who else? I'd like to thank Edgar Agopian from the Support Our Heroes organization. That's a very important organization, guys. They do amazing work in Artsakh and Armenia. Every dollar that you donate goes to their projects. So definitely, we have their little QR code outside. You guys can scan it and donate. Thank you to Eurostyle Production for photography. Thank you over back. We appreciate it. Last minute again, everybody showed up. Jim, who's a friend of mine from Bees Printing, for putting all this stuff together last minute again. And I want to thank our friends and family who showed up today. Thank you guys. We truly appreciate it. I don't know if the boys left, but I want to say a special thank you to the Wise Nuts podcast. Arno, and Edgar is always supporting us. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Follow them, To our listeners and viewers on YouTube and Facebook, thank you guys. To all our followers, we could not have done this, without your support. Anything you want to add?
Yeah. I know Hamlet has one thing to say. Right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
It means a lot coming from you, Hamlet. So appreciate it. It means a lot. You're one of the giants out there, and what I want to say is, if we allow the light of this candle diminish, we are going to see darkness all over human civilization, because we're going to lose the cradle of human civilization, and you'll be all will be in disarray as far as people trying to figure out who's what and all that. It's going to be a huge gap. So I hope that, all this information that I relayed will give you the power for you to examine things yourself, a reasonable and rational approach to things. And I hope that, actually, I had a slide of all the books that I asked you to kind of buy if you can. I had that slide, but that came out 50 more slides after.
Next one, part two.
Next one. Maybe we can do part 2 with your blessing. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Make sure you follow us, Mer Herosner Podcast. Subscribe to it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as we always say, end of the show, respect one another, love one another, and till the next episode, take care of yourselves.